Yeah.
You do not need to wait for permission anymore. If
Yeah.
there's one thing out of this podcast I want people to listen to and read is I am now officially giving you permission. The opportunity for humans to create amazing things is bigger than that has ever existed in time. Like literally ever existed in time. We now have tools at our fingertips that are far more powerful than we've ever had.
Welcome to another episode of the Domino Effect. Today we have a very special guest, near and dear to me. I want to welcome David Stone to our podcast. David and I go way back, just for the viewers. David and I went to college together. We worked a couple of companies after college. Thank you so much for taking the time to join our podcast today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. We have gone back quite a ways, and it's great to see what you guys are doing with this podcast. And I'm just, elated to be one of your first guests.
Yeah, thank you. So, David, just for the benefit of our audience, if you just don't mind, just giving a brief background about your education and your career leading up to what you do today, and then we can get into how that how it all started.
How it all started. Yeah, no, it really, truly work-wise started when I was like 14. And I honestly, I often go back to that in terms of the core learning that I did in my earliest jobs, several of them, right, back to back, because you're learning so much as a kid, but they still hold true. Most of the fundamentals that you learn early on, I'm a big advocate for kids getting jobs early and trying new things. I think once you break out and you start to learn how to handle a customer or work hard, those things carry with you for the rest of your life. So I went to school locally. I got a degree in the intersection of business and technology. I came out from there and I went to Morgan Stanley for a little bit of time. At Morgan Stanley, I learned a lot about finance and I learned a lot about, high end customer management, right? So relationship management. I definitely wanted to flex more into the technology side, but I was at the time growing up in New Mexico, didn't have as much access to technology firms. So I found the one startup, the one small company that I could find there, and I learned a ton there. That company probably gave me too much responsibility at that age. It was just one of those opportunities where they threw kind of everything at you. And I used to go on site at the time and be on site with customers, mostly on my own with a phone, hopefully dialing back to Home Central in case I ever got stuck. But it taught me to think on my toes and be able to creatively just get through anything. Right. When I took that job, I actually traveled around the world. I went all over the place. So I was able to see a lot of different places. And when I arrived in San Francisco, I just completely took me over. I absolutely loved everything about San Francisco. And because I had such a desire to work in technology, I knew that even though I was arriving for a specific job, in a few weeks at that job, I knew that I was coming back. So I did, and I made it my way back. And when I did move, I finally moved to San Francisco. I started at a startup, and I within weeks had called you and said, "We need your help. Come on over."
Yeah.
So we worked at that startup together for several years, and then from there, my career just continued to go on from anything from enterprise software to really big companies like Hewlett Packard, working on cutting edge technologies all around, anything from machine learning to AI to big data to you name it, right? Mobile, all of those. I was able to really kind of catch a lot of those waves just being at the center of Silicon Valley, deep in San Francisco for that time, and just being part of the culture. So I've enjoyed and been super lucky to work with some of the smartest individuals. And I feel like I've through some level of osmosis have been able to absorb some of their genius.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. You brought up an interesting point, which is each experience that you've had in your career, right? Whether it's working in Hewlett Packard or for that small startup company that you started working at, you were gaining the experience and the foundation for something bigger. or something that that brought you to San Francisco. The reason I bring that up is, do you see a similar trend is what's happening today in the world of AI? For example, I know when we worked together for the technology company in San Francisco, we were, initially working with a proprietary software or a search engine or a layer that, looked at deterministic ways to identify relevant sets of data, right? But the reality is, you know, machine learning back then, even though how rudimentary it was the foundation for what we are seeing. AI is, to me, machine learning on steroids, right? So do you sort of see what you've learned over the years that actually has helped with you embracing or adopting AI?
No, everything that we've done up to this point has kind of paved the way for what we're doing with it today. We're super early stages still with AI, but for my entire career, right? Data has driven just so many use cases for the entire industry. So that startup that you're talking about that we worked at, it was one of the first SaaS-based e-discovery platforms. So what we would do is we would take large data sets and we would help law firms parse through all of that data. We would host it for them, and then we would allow them to apply work product on that data, right? So search and being able to find, remember, near dupes, like near duplicates, and the smoking gun is what they would always be looking for, right? How fast could we find the smoking gun? Well, that's a perfect problem, right? And all business is really designed around finding a customer and servicing that customer to the best of your ability, right? And what we've done is we've always just tried to say, okay, well, we do believe that technology can put us in the best position to do that, right? Focusing on AI, or I've worked in augmented reality, I've worked in many other things. If you look at technology as a solution looking for a customer, I do believe you're looking at it the wrong direction. I do believe you need to look for the customer and understand their needs, and then apply a AI or technology or whatever it is of the day against those needs.
Yeah, it's very true, because everybody looks at AI, and it's quite a, I think, expected response is a new shiny toy out in the market. People look at AI as, how do I do things faster, better, cheaper, right? But I think what people, and I want to pull the thread a little bit from what you said, because I think what's really important are two things, right? One is data, like you said, how good your data is in an organization, right? Which we know even in the biggest of organizations, it's not always clean. And two, however good your data is how you can get context out of it. How important are these business processes? So AI is one aspect of it, but I think organizations, fail to give equal or perhaps more importance to all the organizational processes around it that need to govern AI in order for AI to work for them. Is that something that you've seen in your current role?
So when it comes down to quality of data, a lot of that will come out of those organizational processes that you're speaking about, right? So when you look at kind of knowledge work, when you zoom out and just look at knowledge work, right? I think a lot of people are mostly interested in the conversation around AI because they're worried about the impact that AI will have on knowledge work. I come from a basis of the knowledge work that we've been doing up to this point is all around kind of records management, right? I would challenge you to give me any role in which you're not effectively just creating records or managing records, right? So that whole wave of digitization, right? We were used to take records from paper, pen and paper, or typewriter and paper into the digital world. Well, we've done all of that, but we're still just managing records of some kind.
Yes.
So I don't care if you're, a person in an Apple store, right? And you're waiting for the customer to walk in and you help that customer. Well, ultimately, the only thing you're doing is you're creating a sales record, right? You're creating a sales record. You're helping the customer and you're helping them receive product. But the business output was a sale and a sales record. That scales all the way up to everything from Salesforce. My God, it's a huge company, right?
Yeah.
They have the entire flow of records management. AI is changing all of that, though. While humans had to manage records up to this point, create and CRUD. You guys have heard the term CRUD. Create, right? Create. You're going to catch me on the fly. Create, update, or delete, right? So that's all in relation to some kind of record. And we have a lot of different technologies where you're storing it in a relational database or a different type of, there's all these different things that obscure some of the technology that we use, but it's ultimately just records management. When we're talking about AI, and the reason why I'm going to this direction is because you talked about business process. AI will start to be able to really ultimately be the layer that's managing and creating records. It's generative, so it's automatically already creating the record, and then it's managing the records there for you as well. It's updating, it's doing the reads, it's doing the deletes, it's doing all of those things. So that means our job has to change, right? And our job has to level up at that point. And for us, we're changing from managing the records itself to managing what I call the drifts. So a records manager, I could give everyone's role as you were a records manager before. And in the future, you're going to be a drift manager. So a drift manager is ultimately you are helping design a working and evolving system, right? As that system continues to change, you are steering.
Mm-hmm.
You're steering in the drift from left, you're steering the drift from right, you're steering the drift no matter which direction it goes, and you're providing a level of quality oversight.
Do you feel like where we're heading towards is AI is autonomous in that it takes over the busy work, what in layman's terms, busy work that no human wants to do or detests doing. It also takes over understanding perhaps even complex meanings around why this busy work is needed. I think where human intervention is a little higher than that, which is the intent behind it, right? So
Right.
like you're saying, steering the ship towards, someone has to tell AI, hey, my vision or my intent is to achieve this specific outcome. And now how you do it, or that's on you, AI, you figure it out because you have the contextual knowledge. Do you feel that's the shift in mindset most people perhaps need to make in this world of AI?
Well, we're coming from the way that we work is we took industrialization processes and broke them down, right? So when you talk about assembly line, right, we took the same manufacturing techniques originally that we had, and we pulled them into knowledge work. So we broke down the work. So talk about software development lifecycle, right?
Yeah.
You took the same kind of concept and you just created a linear process. So everything from requirements gathering to
Mm-hmm.
PRDs that you create to actually creating the stories inside of a system like Jira to getting those through sprints, right? And creating actual working code and then shipping that code, right? All we've done is we've created that same kind of assembly line of a software manufacturing, if you will, to date, right, with our current technologies. That's because we've been working with deterministic systems always, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're creating deterministic systems and developing them and then managing those deterministic. The systems that we will be working on in the future, the AI-based systems, are non-deterministic. So exactly to your point of what you're saying is that you can actually start to rely on the AI to focus on really just the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And now what I talk about drift is you're steering towards that outcome. How far off from that outcome that your original intent was are you missing, right? The good thing about that is if you've supervised humans, if you've worked your way into management type of roles, and I have made every management mistake that I possibly can in my career, right? Working with humans. And along the way you find like 99% of those are because I didn't communicate the way that I didn't fully express the intent, like where I was trying to go. Some of it is because it's so complex, and other of it is because I need to give you the information that is most relevant to what I'm asking you to part that you need to participate in, instead of overwhelming you with the whole picture. So there's all kinds of reasons why, and some of it's just my capabilities, right? But the same thing is going to exist when you're working with non-deterministic AI systems. Giving it background and building the context window is going to be so much of what we've learned when working with humans.
Yeah.
I also see like you mentioned deterministic, right, and probabilistic. Is it fair to say like the future of the systems would be a hybrid of the two? Because in the enterprise world, especially for organizations working for their business process, streamlining their business process, they want some element of deterministic, right? Especially like think of like finance, right? The office of the
Yes.
CFO. They don't want something probabilistic which is going to red flag the audit team or the compliance team they want everything to be deterministic, right? Based on the guidelines, so on and so forth. So do you see the systems in the future would be a hybrid of the two?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm smiling because we used to laugh about like agile accounting. Like, I don't know, I'm just gonna let's just like we don't know exactly what we're gonna make, but let's just like start by making a little bit. And accounting doesn't work that way. It's like it's very structured, right? Accounting is you know exactly what you need to produce, and you also have gap rules that you have to follow along the way.
Yeah.
It's very structured. I don't think we're getting away. We're getting completely away from structure just because our technology now can be non-deterministic. I think we'll be working with deterministic systems for quite some time as well. But the only difference is I think that the interface between those deterministic systems may be us and AI working with those deterministic systems, right?
Mhm.
And AI will help us build even better deterministic systems along the way. And now when we talk about jobs and job growth, you have a fork. You have people that will be managing deterministic systems. You'll be having people that design and manage non-deterministic systems, and they all have to work together.
I think the key is also, let AI make that decision, right? Whether should I be deterministic or should I be not, depending on the use case or the business or the area you're in, right? If it has enough context and it knows, you know what, you're asking me for a profit and loss statement or a trial balance. Well, yeah, I need to be deterministic to the cent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's interesting that it's definitely going to be a hybrid, but maybe AI makes that decision for you.
I think rather than just having it make the decision, you're saying reasoning while it's actually going through, right?
Mm.
So building really difficult scales, like multiple complexities around if-then statements at scale is very difficult to do, right? And that's why the systems that we've had to date, they can only take us so far, right? Is that if you've ever had to manage, I'm super interested in voice APIs, right? So voice agents. If you've ever had to set up an IVR, right, and manage like anyone can call this phone number and then take it in any direction, but you're actually trying to manage like which direction it goes. So if you're comparing that, like creating that in a deterministic system versus creating that in a non-deterministic system, I will take the non-deterministic system every single day because it can apply reasoning that says like, I can extract some of the intent of what this person is trying to accomplish, and I can navigate the available potential options, right? Versus like, I would have to sit there and go, no, sometimes they do this and sometimes they do this. And I have to physically map every single one of those if-then statements. That is a pain. And we are now in a place where we can do that on the fly with AI really quickly. Just by then, like you said, giving it your intent, right? Here's the intent of what this calling into this phone number, the intent of the customer, and the intent of the business are these two things. And you need to help match those two things. Now I don't have as much programming to do or as much setup.
Don't tell that to my C++ instructor. I knew very early on, I took a couple of courses of computer science back when I was in 11th or 12th grade. And I think I took one in university. And I knew the one thing I knew from all of that, and I did an internship too with one of the utility companies where we went to school. And the one thing I knew after all of that is I'm never going to be, I don't think web programming was my jam. That's one thing that it taught me not to do, not to be going through that process.
I wanted to be one. And I took classes as well. And I remember at that startup that you and I worked at, our CEO, I sat down with him one time. I was taking Ruby on Rails classes, which is hilarious. I was taking Ruby on Rails classes, and I was like, I was thinking about being a developer. And he's like, I have no idea why you want to be a developer, right? He's like, based on your skill set, right? The idea is from his perspective, to have me sit at a computer and create code was a waste, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can zoom out and help the customer and really again tie together where we're going as a business to meet the customer's need. Like if you have that skill set, you should be doing that skill set. And the funny thing is, one of our core developers answered it was really early in the morning, and he answered the phone, and it was a customer on the other line. We hadn't even made it in yet, and he came over to my desk, and he was pale. He was like, "I never want to do that again."
Yeah.
Like this is the developer that would give us like all kinds of grief about every ask that we kind of developer was like, really, you need to ask this. And then he took like a 30-minute call and he was like, I never want to do your job again. I think you guys are amazing. I totally get it now.
Yeah. Human personalities are unpredictable.
Yeah.
The business we're in, right? The other thing that I was also thinking as in the world of AI is all about critical thinking. So on one end, I think, and I'll be guilty of this, I whether you use ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or whatever your favorite LLM is out there, right? I've stopped like even making an effort to think because I'm like, oh, AI will do that for me, right? Why do I even need to think? Here, let me ask this question and I'm just going to get a response and that's the end of it. But as I look at how AI is transforming in enterprise, critical thinking, I think, is one of the most valuable skill that you need because as much as AI, because a lot of it is already delegated out, but ultimately the accountability still rests with you. So if something goes wrong, if the outcome isn't achieved or whatever, no one's going to go to the AI and say, hey, what went wrong, right? They're going to go to a human who's managing the process. And then you've got to ensure that you're able to think through and navigate through all of that. Do you see that people tend to not think as much because they feel like they're using AI as a crux when you actually need to really be aware and be in tune with, how it's being used?
I'll go back to the kind of supervisor role. I'm trying to put people on their journey today into that supervisor role, right? Because if you were to delegate something today, would you have to think through every step of the process in order to delegate it? Or would you delegate mostly the intent, right? So when you're saying like I stopped thinking, all you're telling me is that you actually just delegated that task to A because you didn't want to think of all the granular detail.
Exactly.
You delegated it to it. So
Yeah.
if anything, I would say you're doing exactly what I would recommend you do. Now you're taking a look at the output and saying like, okay, some of this is my fault for not giving the right prompt or the right context or giving it the right additional data, building its memory, all of those things. And then some of it is like, this thing went off the rails a little bit in one way or another. Maybe you're using the wrong model. Like there's all kinds of things, right? So now your thinking, though, didn't stop, is my point. It did not stop. It went to trying to troubleshoot all of those inputs and outputs. Like, how did I get that output, right? Was where your thinking went. So you never stopped thinking along the way. You actually leveled up your thinking.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. It's how do you delegate the lower level so you're able to up level and
I think like the human in the loop is not, I don't think it's going to go away, at least in my personal mind, because you still have to review the output, right? Make sure that what our intention was and what our ask was, is that being supported in the output. So you still have to review the work.
Yes.
Right.
And
that's where the human thinking, human critical thinking, right? All that would still play a part.
I think people will have to be even more creative than they ever were before.
Yeah.
I think that the opportunity for humans to create amazing things is bigger than that has ever existed in time. Like literally ever existed in time. We now have tools at our fingertips that are far more powerful than we've ever had. We're at a very unique point, and fear is what's stopping us from leaning into that and finding our new position, our new path. So, but they're not for everyone. There are some people that are crushing it. They're just leaning into it and learning more every single day. And the hard part is that when you see them, whether it's the hype or the non-hype or the whatever, it's very social media-esque, right? So it feels very much like, oh, everyone in their world has it figured out. The same way that everybody's family is perfect. And believe me, not everyone's family is perfect, right? And I can tell you that the people that are working with these systems, they're even the ones that are developing them are not looking at them and going like, this is amazing and the rest of the world hasn't caught up and we don't need people to work on these. This exact opposite. If anything, it's this new creative landscape. To me, designing these systems and developing these systems, there is an abundance of demand. More demand than we could even get near to feeling right now. And the techniques that are applied to designing great systems and managing and rolling out great systems and implementing them and then monitoring and managing them, those are going to be skill sets that will continue on into perpetuity from my perspective. And there will probably be more roles. The same way that if you think about in the early 90s, there were something like tens of millions of people working in manufacturing, right? Most people were working what? In farming, right? Or even local farming, right? Most of the people had to spend most of their time acquiring food, right? People then worked at, some of the earlier countries like, the Western countries started to move into manufacturing, and you had 10 to 20 million people, something along those lines in the early 1900s, 1920 to 30. Today, we have something like 300 or 400 million of people working in manufacturing, right? So it's over text from that time to this time, right? To where the people that were starting in that time early, when they started to see machines and they started to see into the early parts of it, nobody's going to have a job at all, right?
Right. That's a very good analogy, Dave. All of us here have managed, pretty sizable teams over our careers, right? And you always know it's always a bell curve, right? You have your early adopters that, anything new that comes out, they're the first to lean in to adapt it, to try and not, like you said, they don't have the fear. I'm just going to try it. If I fail, I iterate on it and go and keep going, right? And then you have the laggards that, you're probably never going to convince them 100%. And then you have this big blob in the middle, right? Which is essentially pretty much your workforce, right? That's the entire workforce. My biggest thing is, how do I motivate a workforce to try to tell them to excite them to think differently, to be able to not just adopt AI because it's there and it's a forcing function, but to really, really pivot and say, oh, you know what? I love that AI is doing XYZ because it then frees me up to do what I really need to be doing. Do you see similar challenges? Like, I mean, with the teams that you manage, that how do you motivate people to be excited and to think differently and to pivot to a point, like to your point, manufacturing is 10x now, right? In terms of amount of people employed.
Amount of people globally, yeah. And I want to make sure that I was clear about that too. Is like
Yeah.
globally, right?
Globally.
And obviously those things shift from country
Sure.
to country, but there are more people working, right? In manufacturing, the same thing, the same curve will happen. Is my point. And I think about it in terms of like, okay, so everyone ultimately is running a small business. That your small business may just be yourself, right?
Yeah.
It may just be yourself, and you're adding value to the team that you work on, or you're adding value to the company you work on. When you get older in your career, maybe you're consulting and you're working on several companies, and you're helping along the way. But ultimately, when you think about it, like, you're just adding value where value is needed, right? So in that instance, if I've just given you tools to add more value relatively easily, you don't want to take those tools. You'd rather work the way because you're just used to working in a certain way, right?
Or people don't know any other way to work.
You don't know any other way to work. And I would say is that when you even just a little bit start to use these, just even for the things that you do today, right? You go, actually, I might be able to do my job in less time. Like I might be able to recoup some of the time for myself, right? And if that's all that I've hired you for, then I think that's a fair deal. If that's all that I've hired you for, and you get to recoup some time, but give me the same outcome, I think that's a fair deal. But I can guarantee you that the next step in the conversation, when you are able to meet that small curve, you're going to be like, guess what? I think I can also do. I can also do this. And now that I'm using it more, I'm like, I think I can do this. Like right before this call, I created a couple things that it would have taken me weeks and weeks and weeks to create. And I'm doing that every single day, all day, every day. I'm using AI that is covering way more ground than I ever could before. And the thing is my brain doesn't stop working, right? I wasn't yet able to work on that next problem because I was always stuck working on the one problem because it took me so long to create that output. The minute that you are able to just output it and delegate, as we talked about, our brains don't stop working. We keep going like, if I fix that, then I can fix the next thing.
Yeah. I think also that I think one change that I've seen is it sort of, you got to think through and say, okay, I think there's a need or greater need for specialists than generalists. So I feel like, AI is, if it's going to do all the general stuff, right? I tell the people I work with, right? It's like, look, you're an SME, you're a subject matter expert. No one can ever take that from you. Now, yes, AI can read through sources of data and add context and do all of that. But being a subject matter expert with the experience that you collected over time is all the more critical, especially to ensure that the systems that you are deploying with AI actually work. And so I've been trying to train my team to start thinking about, hey, you are all specialists that AI that you can outsource and delegate.
And I definitely see that. I definitely see that angle. You can become even a better specialist with the tools. I actually go slightly the opposite way, to be candid.
Okay.
I go, yeah, I try to steer people into the more generalist, right? Because
Okay.
if you just hear me out on this piece real quick, because if you think about chess, right, or Go, these are the systems that they were trained on initially. Like, there's nothing
Mhm.
more specialist than just like one game, and then it kicks your ass at that one game. Like, it's pretty amazing, right? Like, it can learn and creates like a very specialist tool. It can learn very quickly. It's the people that actually learn from multiple domains, right? And then see pattern recognition across
Mm.
them, that when they zoom out and they're able to see the bigger picture. I think humans are really good at that. Like,
Mhm.
really good in ways that even AI will very much struggle, because it can only bring in so much of a context window. There's a lot of things that would negate it from being able to do that out of the box. Obviously, they're getting a lot better, et cetera. But to me, I don't read all my books end to end, right? I have a lot of books all over here. I don't read them all end to end. I liked, for some reason, I gave up on that theory a long time ago. Like, having the idea that I have to stop, I can't read these other books because I have to like read this one start to finish. I actually love grabbing a book, reading like a chapter that I know is something that is really keen, and then grabbing a different book and reading something else. They may be on different topics, but there's something coherent, right, to them. And when you're able to pull in, like, I saw it over here and I saw it over here, like, let the AI be super specialist, but then be able to
Mhm.
draw connections. The more that humans are able to zoom out, I think the more that we're going to create something just really unique.
That is a very interesting take. I
Mhm.
like that. It's how do you connect the dots, right? That AI may give you the answers, but are you really connecting the dots to see risks, to anticipate
Yeah.
them, to see where are the red flags? And
And
what
if
are
anything, I mean, with the fear, right? The fear of people losing jobs. It's a real thing. It is a real thing, and I totally empathize and understand. Everything that we've been taught up to this point was specialization,
Mhm.
right? Because of that industrial type of mindset going in. Like, we're creating widgets, and you're really good at this one component of creating those widgets, right? It doesn't even matter if you're a doctor, right? Like, you have to go to school forever to be great at that one thing. To me, I think we're going in the opposite direction, which is like, you can be really good at a lot of things.
I a lot of fear that I see also is in middle management. Like a lot of you're not at a C
Sure.
level, you're not a doer, and so you're this wedge in between, right? They have a lot of fear that, hey, I'm just a middle management. Always look at from Office Space, Milton, right? Yeah, I just take requirements from one from. What do you do? Oh, I just take requirements from this person and
Take it
I
from
translate
here
it
and
to the engineers. Yeah, but what really do you do? Why can't they just talk to each other without you, right?
right.
But I do see that as it's funny that I actually was thinking of that movie when I was talking to someone the other day where they said, hey, you know what? I'm a middle manager. I'm seasoned, but at the end of the day, if AI is going to flatten everything out and make things more accessible, is it a world where I just need leadership and doers and that's about it? There's a huge fear that I'm seeing. I didn't even realize it till someone brought it like, hey, is middle management slowly dying because it's not needed?
I understand that fear, but there's like a million different ways of allowing fear to stop you from forward progress, right?
Yeah.
It's called the resistance, if you want to give it a name. Resistance is ultimately the most toxic thing on this planet, right? And it's usually, the stronger your resistance, the stronger that feeling of resistance, it's likely something that you're desiring on the other side of that even more, right? So I don't know a lot of people. I've spent plenty of time as being in middle management. I've spent a lot of time being that. I never thought to myself, like, I want to work really hard to get to the middle management stage. Like most people that are in middle management are on their way somewhere, right? They're trying, that is a throughput, right? That is a liminal space between where they started and where they're going, right? So my question is, why did you do it in the first place? You were going somewhere. Now you have tools to be able to get to that next step. Go for it.
Yeah.
Why are you stopping yourself? Why is now that it's within your grasp? It is right there within your grasp.
Yeah.
Why are you now stopping?
Yeah.
You can get there faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one question going back to, we discussed about lot of the employees, right? A lot of the managers trying to push AI adoption with their teams. As a former chief of staff, like, is there an approach or maybe a script for getting these resistant employees to actually embrace AI and AI automation? Like, how would you, if let's say a manager is listening to our podcast, what would you recommend?
Recommend letting people make that decision on their own, to be candid. I don't think with every wave that we go through, especially technology, like you age fast in technology. Like it's not one of those careers where you're like, okay, I learned this, I learned a skill set and I can do this for the rest of the rest of the time. Like we've already been, the pace of change in the technology industry is already been moving really fast. Now it's accelerating even beyond that.
Yeah.
I think at every one of those stages, though, because if you've been working in technology for that time, even if you're working in things like journalism that has been disrupted by technology or music that's been disrupted by technology, there were inflection points that you had to ask yourself, do I want to go to this next phase? Do I want to participate in this next phase or not? Right. And it's totally fine to say, like, actually, no, I don't. Right. Like, I don't want to learn the next tool. I don't think that you can force people to, like, I don't think that there's anything that I can be like, yes, but you know what? Your KPIs and your OKRs, you look at that, you know what? Like that's not gonna motivate you to say, like, you know what? I actually really want to participate in this next wave. My take would say, like, try it before you make that decision. Just try it, right? Give it a like, oh, if I did my job a different way, what would my daily life be like, right? I think you're going to find that when you stop listening to the fear and the everything else, and you just pick it up and start using it, you're going to go, well, mostly they were just gaining my attention because it's very clickbaity. Using it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so David, I'm going to name 3 operational trends, and then you can tell me if they are overhyped, properly hyped, or underhyped.
Okay. All right.
It is fun, right? Fully autonomous AI agents doing employee tasks. Do you think that's?
I think it's overhyped, right? Most of the AI stuff is I call it an implementation gap, right? I definitely I've always felt like you should under promise and over deliver. There's a lot of promise in AI because it is quite powerful, but at the same time, like, there's definitely hype there from where we currently stand, but the opportunity exists in creating the tools that enable people, right? So the underlying horsepower of the technology is there, but there's a lot around it that does not exist yet. So we don't know how much hype that is because we haven't got to that state. We haven't got to those stages yet. We're just looking at raw horsepower. So it makes sense. And I also, by the way, think that people that get excited and get hyped on a technology like this, there's also nothing wrong with that either. Like, there are always going to be dreamers in our space. And I love that. Like, people painting a picture of what reality could be. All they're doing is throwing down a gauntlet for us to be able to come in, the implementers, right? I see myself as an implementer of going in and actually making some of those things happen or not having, or staring at the direction we believe it should go.
Yeah.
I think one question I would have for you is, like, so you work with multiple startups around different technologies. So AR, VR was very popular.
It
right?
was.
So, I mean, I think some people might agree that we are hearing the same rhetoric around AI. You have lived through that experience, right? How would you differentiate between a shiny new toy and a tool which will basically move the needle for your business or organization.
Yeah, shiny object syndrome. When I was working in augmented reality, there certainly was a lot of hype associated with it, right? And to me, there still was a level of justification that if you really do stop and think about it, especially in the years that I was doing it, we were applying image recognition on a device, on an iPhone 4, right? An iPhone 4 was using the camera feed to look at things around your physical world, recognize that image, and then deliver a digital payload over it. So literally bridging the gap between the physical world and the digital world. So at some level, there's a reason for hype where you're like, holy moly, a computer that sits in your pocket is able to identify something in the real world and then be able to deliver something against that. The experience may not be something that immediately somebody's like, oh, and now our future is going to be AR glasses that we're walking around constantly, and now we're only in the metaverse or whatever, right? Sure. I think that we leap from where it is today, recognizing that it was amazing at that time, and that it may have a long curve for us to get to like that really long space, but ultimately not denying that like some of this technology is an important step along that journey, along some journey.
Yeah, Girish, I think you had three operational trends you were talking about.
Yeah, I think we talked about the second one with middle management, but I wanted to talk about AI in HR and hiring. Do you see, the reason I bring that up is because interestingly, we had, prior podcast with a friend of ours, they had done a survey where, there were a lot of startups it was a conference in Silicon Valley. And they're talking about how they were trying to acquire the best talent that they probably could. And they were in the world of AI, they were saying, oh, let me tell you all the AI agents or the softwares that have been using to curate resumes and do all of that. And they're going through all these different automated intelligent ways to actually ream through all of that, right? That would typically take a recruiter perhaps to do that first level screening. And then at some point they asked the question, well, okay, this is all great. How many of you guys even have an HR function in your company? And very few hands went up. They're like, oh, I don't think we do. I mean, they were small enough, right? They were not, they were not to the size where they needed one. So do you see, let's face it, usually when there are layoffs in a company, there are certain departments that get hit first and fast. But do you see AI, is that is AI replacing HR and hiring? Is that overhyped, or do you feel that that's
So candidly, I think that the connection that they're making between hiring an AI or not hiring an AI, a lot of it is a bit, to me, in my opinion, is a smokescreen. There are times in a cycle, especially a technology cycle, CapEx has to be shifted from one thing to the other. So a lot of these companies are making investments in other things. What they're saying is that they're taking funding that they applied in one area and they're putting it to another area. Most of these companies their quarterly returns they're actually good. Most of them are, right. They're actually doing quite well. This is not they're still on their growth trajectory, and they believe that if they apply, that's part of what management's role is to where do you invest dollars, right, in the best way to grow the business.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it does mean that they're making decisions that says I'm going to take money out of my labor bucket and I'm going to place it into my CapEx bucket, for example. Okay, I understand that. I also think CapEx depreciates pretty fast. So you have to balance some of this stuff. Like making investments in humans, it tends to pay off. Just historically, it definitely pays off. So I think it's very short-sighted. Most of these, by the way, are public companies, right? So there's a spin, and you do see a bump in their stock price and yada yada. So there's other pieces along there, but no, I don't think that HR is going away. Like, neither
For
are
all our
humans.
HR friends out there.
I don't spend a lot of my time worried that HR is no longer going to exist. Like, I think if anything, HR now is going to play a critical role at being more technology focused, right? I mean, did you hear Jensen Wang get up and say the technology drivers are going to be the next HR people, right? Did you hear him say that? He said at CES, I think it was last year. I don't remember the exact quote. It was a fantastic quote. But I do think, like, look, that's why I'm saying more generalist, is because all of our roles are starting to be blended.
Yeah.
And the question is, like, which way would you like? What do you like, right? Do you like to work? Have you been in engineering this whole time and you kind of like some aspects of HR? Well, you can blend your way right into that as to the extent that you would like to, or vice versa. They can go the opposite direction as well. You do not need to wait for permission anymore. If there's one thing out of this podcast I want people to listen to and read, is I am now officially giving you permission to go do whatever it is that your growth trajectory is taking you, right? You do not need to have written permission.
To that point, David, let's say tomorrow mid-level manager comes and wants to pitch an AI tool, right, to their COO. What's that one slide in their pitch deck they need to focus on, and what metric as a COO you care about when you're evaluating that AI tool?
Did you create the deck with AI? Did you, like, honestly, like the deck itself? Hopefully, we would get past the deck. Decks will always be there, maybe, I don't know. But, like, honestly, just you can create a working prototype now. So why don't you just create a little working? It doesn't have to work. It doesn't even have to work. Honestly, if you come to me, especially if you're on my team, like when we do our yearly goals and those types of things, I don't really care if you actually hit your KPI. I mean, I love if you hit your KPI, exceeded your KPI. That's fantastic, right? But even way more importantly is I actually just want to know what you learned. So if you're like, hey, I had an idea, and then I used the tool and I created this, and look at what happened. And it's not perfect. Like, it's not like it needs a lot more work, but this is what I learned. And let me tell you what I learned. I'm like, fantastic. I mean, you exceeded all my expectations, because people are worried about college. I am worried about college. I have two young girls, and whether college is going to give us the skill sets that we need in the like, train us for those specialized roles that we were talking about, right? To me, if college is able to teach you how to learn and how to try and how to continue to stay curious and learn and continuously grow, then college is doing its job. And it's doing its job. I would recommend that person that really wants to pitch, create something, create a working prototype of something, even small, and then show that.
Great.
It's interesting you bring up college, David, and this is slightly off script, but I'll ask it anyways. I was actually thinking about this the other day. It was like, with all this AI coming in, and perhaps in the next 2 to 4 years, I'm not saying colleges will go away, but does it, with all the access that AI brings to people sitting at home,
Mhm.
do you see where a lot of people maybe undervalue college a little bit, depending on what you're trying to become? I still understand, if your professional degree, like you want to be a doctor, of course, you can't be a doctor just looking at AI. I mean, at some point, your hands need to be, touch and feel a person to diagnose them, right? Even with all the machines you have out there. I almost wonder, like, like do people, like, for example, business, right? Business administration, like, do people say, hey, you know what, there's a lot of content out there, there's a lot of thing that I could curate from using AI tools out there. Of course, it's a bit of a risk to understand what if the sources that it's curating from are genuine or good. And I always wonder, are less and less people going to stop going to college? Do you have that fear as a as a parent? Or
College is going through a change. There's just no doubt about it. And it has less to do with AI than it does with the path it was on anyways. The value proposition that college offers has been on a steady decline. And not because what you're getting isn't valuable, but because what you're paying for it
yeah,
is way too much.
yeah,
Way
Yeah.
too much.
yeah,
Honestly, now there are tools that you can learn, a lot of the things that you can learn. But there's social dynamics, there's working with professors that I mean, all of those things. I also find, I mean, I was talking to a good friend of mine that is at UCLA, and he's like, a lot of kids don't go to class. And I'm like, I cannot imagine paying what you're paying and then not go to class. I cannot
yeah,
even give this one opportunity. You have just a massive opportunity And if the other kids aren't going, all the better. Like you have now access with fewer people now.
Yeah.
To me, it just shouldn't be so expensive. It really should be something that you're able to learn skills, interact with other people, try new things, glean just so much information from the histories in these colleges are amazing, right? So as institutions, I think they're fantastic. As someone working on their business model, I think somebody should take another look at it, especially when it comes to clearly in some of these bigger colleges, like there is money coming from somewhere, right? Because I mean, the amount that is spent on sports, and I love sports, so don't get me wrong. I'm watching the NCAA right now, and I love all of those things, but like we are there for education, right? And that should be a big part of what we do, and we should be able to provide that at a fair price.
So for either people like you and I or Vandeep, we've been in the workforce for quite some time, or and maybe the guidance is different, right? Or for someone just starting out in their career, like I just graduated from college, maybe 2 years out of college, just 2 years into the workforce. So much is changing, so much is happening. What would be a good advice to tell them to where do I start? Like a lot of people I've heard a lot of people say, look, I want to embrace AI. I want to
Find a need.
I get
Find
into
a need.
Sorry.
Find a need. Find a need. There's infinite amount of needs in all of business. And what's cool about this now is like you could find a super niche need, like a very, very small need. You're like, there's for some reason there's like, 30 companies in the world that all have this one really tiny need and they've all solved it on their own in some weird way. But if I created this one little service, it could actually help. Find a need, like go find needs and create a solution to them, right?
Yeah.
If you're able to do that, especially if it's something that you have some level of passion about, there's some overlap, then it's even better. But yeah, no, if you there's just an infinite amount. I was just listening today. This guy was moving, right? And he's like, I hate using corrugated boxes. Like over and over again, you get all these Amazon boxes and they're all different sizes and shapes. So now I got to go buy corrugated boxes that are all the same size so that I could then move, use them once and then throw them away. Like I cannot stand any of this. It's like, why doesn't anybody have, totes that they offer for rent? Well, guess what? They created a totes rental business. And I'm like, that's awesome, man. That's super cool. You just found a random need. And I'm like, now you can probably do that at scale. Is that going to be his only business that he runs forever? No, but all he was doing was demonstrating that he's willing to take this. If you think to yourself, someone should solve that problem, look around, dude. Like, go solve it.
Yeah.
Would you say like you will see more, I would say like single person companies because of this? Now they can find these small niches where they can build solutions to solve these problems. And would that help? So I think we saw, like, I don't know the statistic, but there's a higher number of unemployment with younger generation folks because they're not able to find jobs, right?
Yes.
So should they be focusing on these small niches, as you say, right? Like small companies, they can kind of operate, create these solutions, create some solutions to these problems.
I say, utilize some of the platforms that you have. I understand if you go out and drive an Uber or you Uber Eats or you get on Fiverr or any of those things, right? There's an infinite number of them. I'm not saying you need to stay there forever. And I'm not saying that you need to be, subject to the rate changes that they like. I'm not saying any of those things. But if you drive for 3 months, you quickly go, I can work, like you decide the hours that you're going to work. You decide the frequency. You decide where you're going to get gas. You decide how you're going to pick up the best rides. Like all of a sudden you're running you're running your own business, right? Do you have to do that forever? No, but you should take those learnings of running that business and then turn that into the next thing, right? And if you don't have any of the, like, that is a need. Somebody needs to get from point A to point B, right? That is their need. Very simple need. On Fiverr, there's like a lot of different needs, right? There's all kinds of different needs. Maybe you don't know the context of what the dynamics of that need is. So if anything, don't look at it as like, that's not enough money for me to do that thing. Look at it as like, how much can I learn? Right? I can get paid to learn. I get paid to learn what those needs are. And now I can go create something in space that is a software as a service. It could be anything, right? But I can go create something out of that. I don't need to spend the rest of my life on Fiverr, but I've now understood how to connect to a customer that has a need.
Great point.
Well, this has been quite a
Yeah.
fascinating podcast, David. I think we touched on a lot of interesting points.
Good to see you
I wanted
guys.
to ask, like, just for our viewers, with all this, I get inundated with AI. What AI is doing these days. From various sources. Are there, and just for our listeners, are there specific trusted sources that you go to keep up with the news and world of AI that you would recommend?
I mean, it sounds really silly, but you should use AI to learn about. It sounds so silly. It sounds so silly, but it's like, I mean, it will meet you where you are,
Yeah.
right? Now, it will also tell you the dumbest person that you know.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to think about the dumbest person that you know.
Yeah.
That person is being told that they're really smart right now on ChatGPT. Like they're like,
Yes.
yes, you're right for thinking of that. Okay, so also know that, right?
Yeah.
Also know that it is a bit sycophantic. It probably will tell you that you're amazing.
Yeah.
You'll learn how to work through that part. You're not amazing. You're just like everyone else. but but use it from a standpoint of like, use it from a curiosity standpoint. I would change your approach from, I know people are saying, I use Google and I used to use Google and now I'm using ChatGPT, for example, right? Okay. It is not a knowledge base. I want to just put that out there. It is not. The files that are delivered in an LLM are tiny. Like, it is not storing all of the world's data in that tiny
Yeah.
little thing. I just want to be very clear about that. You can put it on
Yeah.
a thumb drive, right? You're not putting all the world's data on a thumb drive.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? It means that it's weights, that it's like literally just numbers. It's just a ton of numbers that are on that thing, right? So what your goal is not searching, like searching a database. Your goal is like navigating information, right? The LLM is your navigator, and you are help steering and driving it, right? So once you learn that skill set, just by doing it, you're gonna get a lot better at learning how it works, right? So if you want to learn about how it works, you definitely should ask it. Like, if it does something that surprises you tomorrow, I want you to stop for a second and go, hey, how did you do that? What were you thinking? What was tell me about the reasoning that you went through to do that. And how does that work? And then go down that rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole, as far as like the mechanics of how it's coming back with the answers, that will help you a lot.
So what you're telling me is the age-old, true, tried and tested was be curious, be naturally curious,
Be curious.
Be curious.
and you
Be
will
curious.
you will find your way.
Yeah. Yeah.
One more closing question, David, for you is like, what are the 2 or 3 AI tools you're using on a personal basis on your laptop?
I use Claude heavily, and then there's 3 different modes in Claude. So you have Claude Chat, which is like your Chat GPT. You have Cowork. I love the plugins. I don't know if you guys are using plugins in Claude, but I absolutely love the plugins. And then I use Claude Code as well. Beyond just the Claude ecosystem, though, is I'm a big fan of Second Brain. I don't know if you guys are into Second Brain at all, but I am a big fan of basically creating content that I'm as I learn, I'm actually documenting it, and I'm AI does a really good job at semi-structured. So you can actually start to create your own knowledge base of the things that you're creating. So I would recommend those practices, just learning more about that. And then the last one that I'm leaning more into is just voice agents. I think voice agents are super interesting, because there's so much that you can do. And natural language is a really good way at seeing, like, validating that the data that's coming back and you're working with it is telling you a lot about the tech.
Is there a resource where our audience can go, like if they're interested in Second Brain, how to build your Second Brain? Like, is there a resource available for
Yeah,
audiences?
there's a couple books I'd recommend, like Tiago Forte, right? Tiago Forte wrote a book called Building a Second Brain. I think that's a really good book. Yeah, I would recommend trying that. But also, by the way, I mean, I shouldn't. YouTube is fantastic. So
Yeah.
honestly, if you're just looking, like, you can get stuck there. So be careful. But finding some influencers on YouTube that are actively teaching you things, you have to split between the person that's just telling you the same AI news and hype part that everyone else is telling you, not the best, right?
Yeah.
But the people that are using the tools and then walking you through using some of those tools are super cool, and
Okay.
they are ultimately creating their own business, right? Of helping others start to learn new tools. So no matter what tool you want to use, there is very likely someone on there teaching you how to use it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, David. On a Friday afternoon, this was a pleasure chatting with you on all the different topics around AI.
Good to
Thank you
support.
so much for your time. It's been great. I'm
All
so
right, you
glad.
guys.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. Take
Yeah,
care.
you too.
Thank
You
you.
too.